Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to come back to the Northern Ireland Protocol again, but consider the implication for the Conservatives' plans for Ireland, given the latest entirely expected news that we will be extending again the grace periods. But what was maybe not expected was that these grace periods just now seem to keep going. But to what end? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, given that Boris Johnson placed a customs border between Britain and Northern Ireland with his oven-ready deal, we have to apply the same customs measures on goods passing from Britain to Northern Ireland as exists between Britain and an EU country directly. This was obviously to prevent checks needing to take place between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Except we're not applying all the same measures, because our readiness for Brexit was frankly laughable. It was agreed between the UK and the EU that we should have a staggered approach to implementing Brexit in and around Northern Ireland. For example, it is unlawful to export certain chilled meat chilled meats in general, if it's processed, from a third country to the EU. You know, we are a third country, so for example, chilled sausages can't be exported from Britain to the EU. Frozen, yes, not chilled. But as the supply chain as it existed before Brexit meant quite a lot of sausages as well as other foods were exported from Britain to Northern Ireland, we had a bit of a problem. So full implementation of these measures would have created a number of issues. First, there would have been a critical problem with food supplies. Remember that the reason we put off checks on EU imports into Britain is because we weren't ready to apply them, and attempting to do so when not ready would mean severe shortages of the food imports we are utterly reliant upon. And actually, since Brexit, even more reliant on. The second problem was political. It has already created a political storm just on the matter of principle that restrictions exist on movement of some things between Britain and Northern Ireland that do not exist between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. This has upset a lot of unionists. So we had grace periods that allowed for the movement of some goods to Northern Ireland that technically shouldn't be going there, with checks in place to minimise the risk of those goods ending up in the Republic of Ireland. But the risk is still there. So it's not a viable long-term solution to just say, well, let's just ignore this. So the grace period covering chilled minced meats, which has been the hot topic, ironically, was supposed to be ending in April, I think. Then we unilaterally extended it. The EU began their legal action as a result of that. Then the UK and the EU agreed to a formal extension until the end of this month. The legal action was paused this summer. Now there has been an agreement, we assume, to extend it again. But this time the extension isn't just for another 3 months. And then we carry on this ridiculous charade of extending for 3 months at a time and it never ending. The agreement appears to be indefinite. It's really difficult. It's quite curious. The stated reason is to remove the pressure on talks that are ongoing to sort out the practical application of the Northern Ireland Protocol, and that we will implement full measures once this has been done. But taken at face value, this will never be done. The UK position is that it only agreed to the Northern Ireland Protocol to con the public into voting for them and to con Parliament into letting us leave the EU thinking we had a plan for it. As such, they want the protocol scrapped completely. It's like, we only agreed to it so that we could fool everyone. Now that we have done, we don't need it anymore. On the other hand, the EU want the treaty to be honoured and say that there is enough flexibility within the agreement to deal with all of the issues. Now, these positions are mutually exclusive. So the way I would look at this is that the British government will never actually want to solve the problems of the protocol, because then they'd have to accept that it can be implemented in full. They'd no longer have any practical problems with it. These grace periods will never go away. So why aren't the EU kicking up a fuss? They have the law on their side. They also have measures that they can take against us unilaterally with the mechanisms in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. None of that Article 16 nonsense. They have some very powerful tools at their disposal to force compliance. And yet, Not only are they not using them, but they've even paused the much weaker legal action against the government. And that pause remains in place. Why? They must think they are getting what they want. That is the conclusion you draw. The thing is, there's not an awful... there isn't... The things that the government are saying about Northern Ireland and in relation to the protocol, but the work on the ground is often very different. Like I talked earlier this year about how, despite the rhetoric from Boris Johnson and David Frost and some others, that businesses in Northern Ireland were actually saying just how impressed they were with the work that the civil service was doing in adapting systems. Well, that had to be on the government's orders. In other words, the UK government know that they need to accept the protocol, even though they can't admit that, but they also know how politically damaging it would be to implement the protocol in full. So what's going on? Well, a guy I follow on Twitter for really useful insights into distribution by the name of Michael is of the view that there is a private arrangement to just keep things chugging along to give time for the Northern Irish supply lines to reorientate towards the Republic. Now, I said myself earlier in the year, if Northern Ireland imported relatively little food from Britain, because there already have been a lot of jigging of supply lines. There's a lot of Northern Irish businesses have suddenly started getting stuff where they were getting it from Britain, from the Republic of Ireland, or just wider EU through the Republic of Ireland. So if you end up with a situation where relatively little food is coming from Britain, that it's switched to the Republic, or like I say, the wider EU, that full implementation of the protocol wouldn't really be that onerous. It wouldn't actually be a big deal. After all, so let's say, extreme example, let's say no business in Northern Ireland imports chilled sausages from Britain. Like I say, frozen are fine, just not chilled. So let's say there are no chilled sausages exported from Britain to Northern Ireland. We're at that point. Well, in that situation, applying a ban on the export of chilled sausages to Northern Ireland isn't a big deal. We'd be banning the export of something we don't export anyway. Who cares? I mean, some people will care on a matter of principle, but it won't actually have a material effect on people or businesses. And if the overall level of food exports to Northern Ireland is drastically reduced, applying checks also doesn't cause that many problems either, because you can manage them. But although we're speculating on what agreement may exist behind closed doors, there must be some understanding. After all, this latest extension on the grace period wasn't announced by the EU. There was no joint announcement here. It was announced by the UK government and drew, as far as I could tell, no reaction from Brussels. Which means they're going along with it. They're not publicly backing it. Potentially they don't want to publicly say that they're okay with this, because it will then draw questions about where this never-ending cycle of extensions is going. They can hardly come around and say, well, actually, we've got this private agreement with the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to ease along the path to reunification of Ireland by rejigging all the supply lines so that Northern Ireland becomes, for the trading goods at the very least, completely reliant upon the Republic of Ireland and not at all dependent upon Britain, at which point, there you go. But the thing is, the EU, although they might not be publicly saying anything about it, they haven't criticised it in the same way as they did in March, when the British government also made a unilateral declaration. And they haven't restarted the legal action either. So it really could be that the government is just biding its time while more and more Northern Irish businesses decide to import from EU-based suppliers. Maybe they're saying, well, we're working on these problems, but the problems are really difficult. We'd like to get rid of the protocol. They don't want to get rid of it. What can you do? I don't know. What do you think? Maybe you should stop getting supplies from Britain. Maybe you should think about getting them from the rest of the Republic of Ireland. Maybe you could do that. Maybe they're trying to hint that. And that after a year or so, maybe that's what happens. Certainly that would explain why the EU are fine with this. At some point, the supply chain will be sufficiently based in the single market that the full protocol can be implemented with no objections based on any practical difficulties, because there won't be enough of them. There won't be enough trade in those affected items to create any difficulties. So although this is being presented from both the government and the EU that, well, it's not from the EU at all, but from the government, is to allow time for talks to progress. The reality could just be that it's to allow time for the practical situation on the ground to allow for what is currently a mutually exclusive demand from both sides, London and Brussels. The end result, of course, would be British companies losing business to Northern Irish customers, as they are doing, and EU businesses gaining that custom, which they are doing. Another Brexit win for the EU and a loss for Britain. But that's just what Brexit is. There's no way of winning by leaving a large market. It's like a big retail business moving from the high street and setting up shop at the Sunday car boot sale. You're never actually going to maintain, let alone boost your levels of trade. Or it might not be that at all. It might be that the EU didn't agree to this at all, but they're just ignoring all the messing about because they have other important issues, and they live in hope that Johnson's government will eventually start to see reality if they're given enough time to ponder these things. I've said in the past, I think that would be a vain hope if that is the case. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.